What is up, my beautiful people? Hope you're all having a tremendous day. Exile451 here with you again to make it even better. I know we just went there yesterday, but I'm going to go to r/AskReddit again for some rags to riches stories I'm sure you're gonna love. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Not me, but my dad. He was given up for adoption by his biological mother and taken in by a struggling family who had way too many kids for their tiny income. His adopted father was a soldier whose unit got mustard gassed in World War I, and so he was never healthy and was pretty much bedridden for the rest of his life. His mother supported 7 kids and an ailing husband with little to no support. When my dad was maybe 7, he stole his family's grocery money just so he could buy a pie because he never had tasted one before. They had to eat leftovers for a few days and he felt terrible. As soon as he was old enough, he got a job and paid his way to university. He was the first one in his family to attend uni and own a car. Eventually, he built his own house from scratch with his bare hands. He finished uni and got a job as a teacher. Pay wasn't that great, but he was smart with money. He invested in the right things and allowed it to grow. Eventually, he became chief guidance counselor for a large group of schools. He just retired now. Not super rich, but quite dramatically better off than where he started. I'm really proud of him. We always lived in rented houses, moving frequently within the same area. I was too young/stupid to know it was because my parents got behind on the rent and we had to. The facilities kept getting worse, and towards the end of that period, we had an outhouse and no running water, although we did have a hand pump at the kitchen sink. Food was, well, an adventure. Eventually, I went to college, then law school, GI Bill, and lived a middle-class life, which seemed like being rich to me. No dad, mom on drugs with abusive boyfriends, no money. Went to junior college, able to transfer to a university with financial aid and scholarships, graduated a few months ago, got a job as a finance professional, and I'm doing pretty well. Not in the riches yet, but working on it. I don't ever want to have to worry about money again. Growing up poor sort of embeds you with this certain drive/work ethic that got me through all the tough years. I wouldn't trade my upbringing for anyone else's because it made me who I am today. Wise beyond my years and able to cope with almost anything unfazed. My mom and I lived in a plywood shack until I was 7. No electricity, hand pump for water, outhouse, all of it. We had a couple of animals and ate a lot of eggs and drank goat's milk from our goat, except when our one neighbor would sometimes let us milk one of their cows. My mom killed rattlesnakes for dinner, squirrels for stew, and we had a small garden to grow vegetables in. She met my stepdad when I was 7, and they were married in 3 weeks. Life didn't really get any better. Except we had moved into town, into a trailer park, where we had electricity and running water at least. Of course, the trade-off was that he was an alcoholic that beat me and didn't work, so we didn't really have any more money. I got kicked out at 18, somewhat of a blessing in some regards because at least the beating stopped. Of course, I was homeless and ended up falling in with a bad crowd because at least someone accepted me. I ended up becoming a meth addict, ran drugs, occasionally sold my body for a fix. It was a pretty dark time, really. A lot led to me pulling out of it, mostly some lucky breaks and the fact that I wanted out. I moved into a homeless shelter, got clean, worked a few jobs, collections mostly. Married an abusive guy because I thought that's what love was. Got divorced when I realized that it wasn't, went back to school, and got a job at a credit union. Started making a bit more, graduated with a degree in finance, and was one of 3 people from my class hired at graduation. Now, I'm a successful finance analyst for a Fortune 50 company in charge of billions of dollars. Funny what a few years can do. Not me, but my dad. He was born in Dalian, China in the 60s, so the Cultural Revolution was underway. His mother, my grandmother, was a middle school teacher and his dad was a cop. But neither of them really had more than about 6 years of schooling. They didn't really make much money at all, and there were 3 children, my dad, my uncle, my aunt, to feed. In addition, my grandma had suffered from bronchitis that went untreated when she was very young and left holes in her lungs, so money had to be put into medical care for her because she got infections pretty often. When my dad was around 11 or so, the government relocated his family to the countryside. I think this was because of his dad's job as a cop, but I'm not really too sure. I recall my dad telling me how all they ate was this dry, bland cornbread, literally made from corn and water. Not even close to the tasty kind Americans eat on the regular. He also had worms often because of the untreated water. My dad took my sister and me to visit his old village a few years ago. The houses, if you could call them houses, were usually just one room with a single wide stone bench with a furnace underneath. If I recall correctly, you would use the bench thing as a table to eat at and then put a mat over the stone, light a fire in the furnace, and the whole family would sleep on it. The fire under the stone would keep them warm in the winter. I sat on it. It's pretty hard. No Tempur-Pedic at all. The toilet was a typical little box shed with a narrow slit in the ground that you'd squat over to do your business. Well, my dad was always pretty bright, but didn't really see himself doing anything besides music. He played the Chinese dulcimer, since universities had been shut down in China during this time. A teacher encouraged him to keep studying hard because she believed universities would open up again by the time he was old enough. By his high school age, his family was able to move back to Dalian, and he kept studying hard, constantly doing extra work and studying, and went on to get the highest college entrance exam score in his entire city. Dalian is a pretty large metropolitan city, so this was a big deal. Naturally, he went to study at Peking University, which is the top university in China. After this, he somehow managed to get approved to move to the US and get a master's in biomedical engineering. He had to work his butt off, originally slumming it in the less pleasant parts of Boston, but eventually saved up enough money to move out with my mom and start their lives elsewhere. Now, he's the CEO of a pharmaceutical company in Shanghai. My sister and I got to grow up in a very nice, affluent town in the Silicon Valley, and you would never be able to tell that my family has history with poverty in China. Well, as always, those are some inspiring stories of rising up from nothing to have an incredibly successful life. It just goes to show that if you're dedicated and motivated enough, there is nothing that can hold you back from your aspirations. Poverty doesn't have to be a life sentence. You can always achieve more. You just have to ignore the naysayers and be willing to do the harder things others might not want to do. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. I truly appreciate all of you coming by the channel, watching these videos, and supporting it the way that you have been. Please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Now go out, have a wonderful day. I'll see you all tomorrow. Until then, I'm Exile451. Stay beautiful, people.